Hi guys, my name's Bailey. I'm going to be giving you guys an informative speech on how culture influences communication today. To introduce this topic, I'd like to give you guys a quote. Communication is the essential medium of a creative culture, the communal sea in which we all swim. A company that can't communicate is like a jazz band without instruments. Music just isn't going to happen. Quote by John Cow. I think this just shows how crucial culture is in communication, and if that we can't learn or adjust our ways of communicating with different cultures, nothing's going to happen. It's just going to be a bad communication process. Culture is something that has an impact on everybody's lives. From birth to death, we learn new cultures. We are a part of different cultures. We gain new cultures. And I think it's just something that has an impact on all of our lives, not just communication, but what we eat daily, how we act, what we do. Culture has a lot of impact on our lives, and it influences how we communicate with each other. I think, like I was talking about earlier, if you don't know how to communicate with different cultures, you can't interact with them, and you tend to lose out on that good communication skills that you could potentially have with other people. This topic has a big interest with me because I just love studying culture. Culture is one of my favorite things to study in school. Even though I'm going to be a nursing major, I think culture is something that I'm going to be dealing with on a daily basis, but I just love studying it, and I think it's something that we all should have a general knowledge about, and something that I feel is important. And today I'm here to tell you about how culture influences communication through our nonverbal communication, the use of our language, and the way we listen and our listening skills. Like I was talking about first is the nonverbal communication. Culture influences our nonverbal communication and how we use it, the ways we use it, what each kind of nonverbal communication does with us. First off, I want to talk about gestures. Gestures are deliberate movements and signals. They are an example of nonverbal communication, and very important because one culture might think a gesture is a good gesture, and then another it might be bad. Gestures are like hand signals, like waving a hi, moving your hand, or other things like that. And some cultures take different gestures differently. Body language and posture is another one that I would like to talk about. Sitting up straight, having a good posture, talking about standing up and looking each other in the eye. I think that's something that different cultures have different beliefs on as well. Something that will change as you go into different cultures. Some cultures don't sit straight up to talk to others. Some will. It just depends on the different culture you're looking at. And then proxemics, I feel, is the one that's the most influenced by culture, because that's our basically our personal space, or the amount of distance we need in different kind of situations with people. Like with in America, we talk about having our personal bubble. We only let people in our personal bubble that we are in a romantic relationship with, or close friends with, and you keep distances for different cultures. But in other cultures, people might take different distances for different things. If you're close up to somebody in a different culture, that might mean you're just acquaintances. Culture can affect how your proxemics are influenced. As you can see, culture has an influence on how we use our nonverbal communication, which takes me to my next point about how the use of language is affected by culture. First, wanted to take a look at, though, these graphs that talk about different languages used in the U.S. and how this would affect our nonverbal communication. So you can see 70% of non-Latino whites speak English, but only 12% of Latinos are actually English proficient. 63% of Latinos are limited English proficiency, and other cultures, as you can tell, are lower than 13% English proficient, most of them. And that affects our nonverbal communication and how we communicate with other people through our nonverbal communication. And then on the bottom graph, it talks about how many the percentage of people 18 or older speaking a language other than English at their home. So you can see in the countries that are in the states like Texas, California, Nevada, they all have 20 to 35% of the households speak different language other than English. And that could potentially bring up different problems in nonverbal communication. Moving on to the use of language, we're going to talk about in this graph about dialect. And dialect has its own grammar, vocab. It's almost like an accent. It's different than an accent, though. It has like pronunciation rules that make it unique from different regions. From this graph right here, you can tell the U.S. has about 25 or plus different dialects. So that changes how we use our language and how we talk to others. Like I said, people from Michigan might pronounce something differently than people from California, or they might use different words for different things. Like an example like pop and soda, those are different examples of how the use of language is affected. And as we continue talking about the use of language and how it's affected and influenced by culture, we talk about how what kind of words we use and the meaning of those words. And in Michigan, like we talking about pop means we usually just use pop, but down south they think they use coke to talk about pop. And the different words and the meaning of words are influenced by by our culture. And another example would be how we talk or the way we talk to others. Like we talked about, like the dialect and how we pronounce things, how we talk to others, and people in our family, we grow up, we get that dialect from them, and that's most commonly where things come from when we talk about that. Also, the use of our language is influenced by our culture in many different ways. If we can learn how to understand that, and we can learn how to talk to other people in their kind of language and their dialect, it's easier to communicate with others. In short, the use of language is influenced by culture and is shown through our words and how we talk or form sentences. Next, we can talk about how our culture influences our listening. Finally, I'm going to talk about how culture influences listening, the way we listen, and how we listen to others. In cultures like the United States, where information is stored on our phones and on Google and search engines like that, it is easy to just write information down and go on with our lives by not understanding the meaning of what those words mean. But in oral cultures, they actually try and listen effectively to other people. They look at each other's in the eye. They try and listen to what they're saying. They don't write things down while they're listening. They effectively listen to try and look into their other's eyes and understand what they're saying. Culture influences the way we listen to other people and how effectively we decide to listen, how we listen to information, how we process it, what we focus on, and we believe we are expected to react and or respond to all come from our own unique cultural conditioning. Like from that quote, just cultural conditioning, how we're growing up in our culture, like how we listen to other people and how we react to other people and process information comes from our culture and how we're grown up in our cultural conditioning. Now that we've understood how culture influences our listening, we can conclude on what kind of impact that culture influencing our communication has on the world. In conclusion, as we have shown from this speech, culture influences communication through nonverbal communication, use of language, and the way we listen and our listening skills with other people. The study of culture and how it influences communication is ongoing. You'll never have a solid answer about how it does, but we can always try and have a better understanding of culture and communication. Like I said in the introduction and even before that, it's good to understand other cultures because we in the United States, there's so many different cultures, there's so many different people from different countries. It's good to understand what is bad for them or what's good communication for them so we can adjust our communication. As a community, we have to learn how each culture influences communication to improve our communication. If we want to better learn to communicate with others, that's how we have to do it. And like I was saying, it'll help us all communicate with others, and our communication skills will be on high when we decide to try and change up our communication skills with other cultures. Here is my references page. change. And I just want to thank you guys for listening, and I hope you learned something about how culture influences our communication, and you can take it into your own life. So thank you very much.